You've seen the headlines. Trump slaps China with tariffs as high as 245% on some of their products. China fires back with its own countermeasures. And now, both sides are blinking, but refusing to back down. So what happens next? Will there be a deal? Will the tariffs keep rising? Or are we witnessing the start of a long-term trade war that could reshape the global economy? In this video, we'll break down exactly what's on the table, what Trump really wants from China, what China is demanding in return, and the three possible outcomes that experts say could define global trade in 2025. Whether you're an importer, an investor, or just trying to stay ahead, stick around till the end to see what you should be watching for. Welcome to Smart Money Vids, where we explore the strategies, decisions, and real-world events that set the wealthy apart from the rest. After returning to office in 2025, President Trump moved quickly to reshape U.S. trade policy. He began with a 10% tariff on nearly all imports, followed by a China-specific rate of 125%, replacing the earlier blanket measure. China responded with matching tariffs and filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. Then came another escalation. Trump added 20% more, bringing the total tariff on many Chinese imports to 145%. And for a handful of Chinese goods already facing 100% duties under the Biden administration, that pushed the total all the way up to 245% for a small group of products. Now, both sides are posturing but refusing to back down. No high-level talks, no breakthrough, just rising pressure in the middle of an already fragile global economy. This isn't just about tariffs anymore. It's a power struggle, and the next move could reshape trade for years to come. To make sense of where the trade talks might be heading, we first need to understand what Trump is really after. He's not just trying to punish China, he's trying to force a reset, a total restructuring of how the U.S. trades with the world's second-largest economy. At the top of his list, closing the trade deficit. Trump has long argued that the U.S. loses billions by importing more than it exports, and China remains America's largest source of that imbalance. But it goes deeper than numbers on a trade sheet. He wants China to buy more U.S. goods, especially agricultural products and energy, stop the theft of American intellectual property and technology, end forced tech transfers, a practice that's pressured U.S. companies to hand over trade secrets in exchange for market access, reduce unfair subsidies that help Chinese companies undercut competitors on the global stage. And this time, he's not negotiating quietly. From campaign rallies to press conferences, Trump has made it clear, tariffs aren't just a tactic, they're leverage. He believes that by hitting China hard enough, they'll be forced to the table on America's terms. And while some critics call this strategy reckless, others say it's working. Supply chains are shifting. Manufacturers are looking elsewhere. And behind the scenes, China knows that prolonged tension could hurt its own economy just as much. The pressure is real. But whether it leads to meaningful reform or just deeper division is the real question. If Trump is playing offense, China is holding the line. From Beijing's perspective, these tariffs aren't just economic pressure, they're an attack on sovereignty. And while Chinese officials have signaled a willingness to talk, they've also made their position clear. The U.S. must ease tensions before any real negotiation can begin. Their demands start with the most obvious: roll back the steep tariffs. China wants the U.S. to reverse the high tariffs that now apply to many of its exports, including the 245% rate on a small group of selected items. They also want the U.S. to stop treating trade as a weapon. That includes abandoning policies like the reciprocal tariff framework and walking back export controls on advanced technology, particularly semiconductors. There's also the issue of national dignity. China sees the U.S. approach as confrontational and humiliating, designed not just to fix trade, but to contain China's rise as a global power. Still, despite the tough talk, China isn't slamming the door shut. Officials have hinted at room for cooperation on issues like fentanyl export controls, agricultural purchases, even revisiting TikTok negotiations. But the message from Beijing remains firm. We'll talk, but not under threat. In other words, they want to reset too, but on equal footing. Now that we know what both sides want, let's look at where this could actually go. According to trade experts and former negotiators, there are 3 likely outcomes, and each one carries very different consequences for importers, exporters, and the global economy as a whole. Outcome 1, a full trade war. This is the worst-case scenario and the most unpredictable. Tariffs continue to rise, China tightens its own restrictions, and both sides dig in, with no deal in sight. In this version of the future, supply chains suffer, prices rise, importers either absorb the cost or pass it along to the consumer, and countries that rely on global trade like Germany and South Korea start to feel the ripple effects. It's not just an economic issue anymore, it becomes political and potentially long-term. Outcome 2, a temporary truce. This is what many experts are betting on. Both sides make small concessions. China agrees to buy more U.S. goods, likely agriculture and energy. The U.S. pauses future tariff increases or walks back some measures temporarily. This doesn't solve the core issues, but it cools the tension, at least for now. It gives both governments a win they can spin at home and buys time for more serious negotiations later. Outcome 3, comprehensive agreement. This is the most optimistic and least likely of the 3. It would involve deep structural reform, stronger protections for intellectual property, fairer trade practices, and clearer rules around tech, tariffs, and market access. But it would also require something in short supply right now: mutual trust and political courage. Neither side wants to appear weak or make concessions publicly, especially when national pride and political momentum are on the line. Still, some believe the economic pressure could eventually force this outcome, if not this year, then in the near future. So where are we headed? That depends on what happens behind closed doors and how far each side is willing to go. Regardless of which outcome plays out, one thing is clear: you can't afford to sit back and wait for the dust to settle. Smart importers and investors are already adjusting, because the worst mistake right now is assuming things will go back to normal. Here's what you should be watching for. First, exemptions. Not every product is treated the same under these new tariffs. Some electronics, for example, have been temporarily excluded. If you rely on imports, pay close attention to updated exemption lists. They could be the difference between staying profitable or taking a serious hit to your bottom line. Second, supply chain flexibility. Now is the time to diversify. Importers who once relied heavily on China are already shifting to countries like India, Vietnam, and Mexico. That doesn't mean abandoning China, but it does mean having a plan B and maybe even a plan C. Third, signs of negotiation. Statements from U.S. trade officials, unexpected diplomatic visits, or shifts in language from Beijing. All of these can hint at where the talks are headed. Markets often move not on results, but on signals. And if you're tuned in before the headlines break, you'll always have the advantage. In short, the winners in this situation won't be the ones who wait for a perfect solution. They'll be the ones who stay informed, move early, and adapt fast. At this point, it's not just about tariffs. It's about leverage, pride, and global positioning. Both sides know what they want, and neither wants to back down. But smart businesses aren't waiting, they're preparing. Because in times like these, the advantage goes to those who act early, not those who wait for a deal. At Smart Money Vids, we're all about turning knowledge into action. Check the description for helpful tools and subscribe for more life-changing insights. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.